Got it. Let me know when. Now we have event number 4, Women's Collegiate Varsity. Lane 1, University of Oklahoma. Lane 2, California State University, Sacramento. Lane 3, the University of Tulsa. Lane 4, University of California, Davis. Lane 5, Western Washington University. Lane 6, Villanova University. And in lane 7, Southern Methodist University. The first women's event of the morning. Once again, absolutely perfect racing conditions down here in Perez Cove. The aligner's flag is up, so it's now up to the starter and the tower behind the crews. Some of the coxswains are having their two-person scull the bow. There's a slight crosswind from lane 7 towards the shore. But it's very, very ideal conditions. Liner's flag is still up. Once again, they will announce the crews from lane 1 out to lane 6. And after they say Southern Methodist University, the starter should say, attention, dropping the flag, go. Heart rates in the shell right now are up there a little bit. In anticipation of going from 0 up to hull speed in a matter of 20 to 30 strokes. Some of the
Oklahoma,
still a little fussy getting their boats pointed
Sacramento,
towards the finish.
Tulsa, Davis, Western Washington, Villanova, SMU. Attention. Go.
There's the start. Event number 4, Women's Collegiate Varsity. Heat A. All 7 crews away cleanly. Pretty much you could throw a blanket. There's not really separation, although the Sooners from Oklahoma seem to have poked out to about a 3-seat advantage over the competitors. Over here, Western Washington, the Vikings are in the 2nd spot. Really too close to call positions 2, 3, 4, and 5. But definitely, lane 1 is the race leader.
He's staying here all day.
The University of Oklahoma. They've shifted down. And now in lane 3, University of Tulsa. The Golden Hurricanes are in that 2nd spot, sitting about 5 seats down to your leader. 3rd position belongs to Cal State Sacramento. And then it's Western Washington. And actually over here in lane 7, Southern Methodist has pushed themselves back into the top 3 or 4 positions. Once again, it's hard to separate unless you're really off the pace during that first 500 meters. But clearly, your race leader in lane 1, University of Oklahoma, followed by the University of Tulsa in lane 3, followed by Western Washington in 4, SMU out here in 7, and the others are bunched for those other positions. That's the report, 500 meters into race number 4, the Women's Collegiate Varsity.
Checking once again our lane assignments. In lane number 1, it is Oklahoma, our current leader. They jumped off to the lead early and have been able to hang on so far. In lane number 2, it is Sacramento State. University of Tulsa battling for the lead is out there in lane 3. The crew occupying lane 4 will be UC Davis. Lane 5, Western Washington from Bellingham, Washington. Lane 6, Villanova. And lane number 7, Southern Methodist University.
Oklahoma are not just the form crew in this race, they're the form crew in this event. They're unbeaten so far this season. They've beaten Kansas State, Kansas, Tulsa, who are also in this race, Southern Methodist twice, who are also in this race, University of San Diego, Central Florida, and Texas. So they come into the Sooners, come into this unbeaten. and they're asserting that authority now in the second 500 meters of the race. There are some other unbeaten crews in this race too. Sacramento State in lane 2, they've beaten St. Mary's. Humboldt State, UC San Diego, Mills, and San Diego State, and have tied, which is a really unusual occurrence in rowing events. They've tied UC Davis, who are outside them in lane 4. Tulsa have beaten Kansas State, Kansas, and Central Oklahoma, but as I said, they've lost to Oklahoma, who are in lane 1 in this race. Western Washington, this is their varsity crew. They've beaten Puget Sound, Willamette, Pacific Lutheran, and Seattle Pacific. Villanova out in lane 6 have beaten Florida State and Rollins, but gone down to Drexel. And Southern Methodist out in lane 7, who are pushing hard in this race. They've beaten Creighton, Oklahoma City University, and Central Oklahoma, but gone down to the University of San Diego, Oklahoma, Central Florida, and Kansas State. So all the crews in this race have done a lot of racing so far this season. They've come up against a lot of other well-credentialed crews, and this will be a very tight race across the field.
Pushing through what would be considered our wind tunnel area, Ingram Street Bridge, and so far wind has not been a factor today. In fact, we've even had a bit of a trailing wind, and that is helpful. The crosswinds are the ones that create a problem, and the biggest problem occurs when they come through that Ingram Street open bridge area. They get blasted by a little bit of a crosswind if it is blowing. It is blowing a little bit right now, but nothing that seems to be inhibiting the cruise at all. Oklahoma continues to be in lane number 1 and on the lead. It looks like they've gotten some separation out and away from Tulsa out there in lane number 3. And then all the way outside in lane 5, Western Washington beginning to make a move, and you better watch out for SMU all the way on the outside.
This looks like it's going to be Oklahoma with a very, very tough race for the second spot. At the moment, it looks like their Midwest compatriots, Tulsa, hold down that position and maybe establishing a little bit of separation on Sacramento State and UC Davis and Western Washington.
All the way on the outside, I don't think that we can count out SMU right at the moment. Western Washington trying to get back into the hunt after they got off to a good start, but Oklahoma so far has led it wire to wire, and they're along the shoreline. 2 crews outside of them would be Tulsa, and Tulsa being challenged a bit on the outside by Western Washington. And then all the way on the outside, Villanova appears to have kicked in a little bit of a challenge.
So it's Oklahoma who have established a commanding lead. What they'll be doing now is trying to sit on the front of this race without having to expend too much energy that might be deleterious to them for tomorrow's racing. Tulsa have that little bit of an advantage. Sacramento State have trailed off their challenge a little bit in lane 2, and the challenge to Tulsa for the second spot is coming from UC Davis in lane 4 and Western Washington in lane 5. Southern Methodist on the far outside are challenging strong, but rowing a little bit in a void because the Villanova crew is trailed behind a little bit in this race.
This is Oklahoma along the shoreline. They've gone wire to wire so far, and as Charles mentioned, they seem to be the quality crew in this particular event. Then outside of them is Tulsa. Tulsa was challenged with about 250 meters to go, but it looks like they have fought it off. UC Davis has trailed back, and Western Washington moved up a little bit. Sac State in the battle early going has fallen back, and then on the far outside, SMU making a challenge has fought off Villanova on the outside. This will be Oklahoma coming across our finish line as the unofficial winner. And then on the outside of them, that would be Tulsa in that second spot. Very tight coming down here for third position. It looks like Sacramento State may have battled it off, just getting past Western Washington and UC Davis. And then to the far outside, that would be SMU, followed by Villanova.
So unofficially, of course, as we watch the replay, Oklahoma and Tulsa going through to the grand final. And then it looks as though Sacramento State really gathered themselves and came again to hold up their fade that had been happening previously, and they've held onto a spot in the petite final where they'll be joined by Western Washington, who seem to have just got there over Davis.
Yes, absolutely. Please do. Need to hear the starter.
The thing that is fascinating about these crews, as you can see the massive fatigue on the Oklahoma boat after a successful row, they get up at the crack of